Hey, welcome back to Hacking SEO. I'm Nick, CTO at Direction.com and WordPress developer of 15 years. So let's face it, a hacked website just plain sucks. But did you know that 99% of the time, a website owner has no idea that they've been hacked? Let's just go a little bit deeper, right? Did you know that 99% of the time, hacked websites are mainly hijacking your website for SEO? Think of it like a vampire out for blood. You've got domain authority, you've got tons of traffic, people use and love your website. But one day you find 3 to 5 links burrowed in your post pointing to Xanax or a Justin Bieber music video. Maybe even 7 to 8 page loads your users are directed to an erectile dysfunction ad. Now you think I'm nuts, but it's true. Malware these days has a prerogative. They hijack your website not just to play games like they used to. They reap what you've sowed for all its bountiful traffic and its search engine rankings. So let's dive into a couple fantastic ways to scan and bulletproof your WordPress website in just a few steps. Because at the end of the day, security, for lack of a better word, is critical for SEO. So let's dive into a couple of things here, okay? Number one, real-time scanning of files and databases. Now, I'm a big fan of security, but throughout my 15-year experience, I've come to find that I actually don't truly recommend a WordPress security plugin. Here's why. I've fixed hundreds of hacked WordPress websites in my lifetime. No plugin, despite their fancy firewalls and their real-time scanning, will actively search and destroy malware in the database. So what does that mean for you as a website owner? Though your files are scanned, you'll have an exploit in your database that continues to deploy the attack from the database level. Now you're just simply mopping up the mess, all of that just continues to spill, right? It just keeps going. It's a cycle and it's endless. Here at Direction.com, we do things a little differently. We have our own system in place that actually detects and removes malware at both levels, database and files, effectively halting the endless cycle that you would otherwise fight on a day-to-day basis. So if you really are noticing unusual pages appearing on your website, or you just want a quick checkup, chances are that's the reason why you're here anyways. I suggest getting a full site audit, links below in the comments, and again, it's completely free at Direction.com. I recommend it. Hopefully that maybe we can kind of check out your website and see if there is anything going on or things maybe that you're just not seeing. Number two is use fewer plugins. Have you ever seen a WordPress website with like 55 to 60 plugins? Well, you shouldn't. It's a moment that leaves me personally disappointed by how a website owner thinks that, hey, I can just band-aid fix everything. The key is to use only what you need. The more plugins you use, the more you depend on them to operate. The overwhelming majority of attacks, they begin at the plugin level. So deleting the plugins you don't use actually just makes things a whole lot easier for you to kind of just mop up and understand the reasoning for any sort of hack in the unlikely but sometimes inevitable place that it might actually happen. And then most importantly, always updating the plugins that you do use. And doing so actually lessens the likelihood of a vulnerability to appear, and the less likely it is that your website will be hacked ultimately. The whole mantra of just consuming as little as possible is basically meaning just leave nothing to waste. Use only what you actually need. It can be said for in life, but also for a WordPress website, it just makes a whole lot of sense. So my number two, and it's definitely something I truly recommend. Number three is strong passwords and two-factor authentication. Now, this one's pretty common sense. It's been around for a very long time, and it's pretty much drilled into everybody's brains now, right? Don't use your bank passwords. Don't use your DoorDash password. Don't use passwords that can just be really easy to guess. It's still an evergreen issue that we have to deal with in 2023. And WordPress does actually a great job of requiring strong passwords. So I leave this one as actually a lower priority these days, but it's still a good idea to mention it, so I will. You have to trust but verify that you and your administrators are using passwords that cannot easily be guessed. We live in a world of bots that can just really outsmart humans, and now we've got AI on the horizon anyways. If you're fortunate enough to own a high traffic, high value, high dollar website, also a good idea, activate two-factor authentication. This actually practically eliminates the possibility of brute force attacks, and I might get a little bite on that, but the truth is, if you're talking about XML, RPC, or any sort of cross-scripting attacks, those are something that we can talk about in a future video, but for the most part, as long as you have a very strong amount of security in front of you for authentication, strong passwords, two-factor authentication especially, you really practically eliminate the chance of a brute force attack. Doesn't completely eliminate it, I have to say that, I have to preface that, but that being said, it's still the number one way to prevent an attack in the best possible way, right? So there's plenty of plugins that actually offer this extra layer of security, and it's always good practice to implement. Just be sure you aren't using, again, passwords that you've used elsewhere, like your bank account or DoorDash or whatever. Definitely not a good idea, and I don't have to tell you that. And last but not least, number 4 is probably my favorite and the most important one above all. It is backups and scheduling them daily or even hourly. Backups usually solve 100% of all problems. You've got a broken website, at some point in time, it wasn't broken before. The key is to identify the time in which your website was not broken or hacked, which it's very difficult to pinpoint, right? So that's why I always say that having daily backups is usually the safest bet, but more importantly, retaining an extended number of backups so that you have maybe 60, even like 90 days of backup retention, going back a few months, because like I said earlier, most malware these days, they just hide in plain sight. They plain view. It doesn't want to be noticed by you. It wants to leech off your website like a parasite. So in many cases, if you haven't found it, it's almost too late, really, honestly, because if you put your website back by, I don't know, 60 days, you probably will be okay. But if you went to a backup point, which was maybe 3 days ago or so, that day, you might still have the actual hacked website. There might still be malware. You might have a base64 exploit. You might have it hiding deep within your file directory or your database. It's really important to do your due diligence, take care of your future self here, always have a really excellent backup retention policy in place. It's critical. That said, WordPress security plays a serious role in SEO. Sure, hacking is a major inconvenience, but it does go further. You risk the authority you've established over years, search engine rankings that you paid thousands and thousands of dollars to climb and defend, hidden links that point your visitors away from your site, or just basically irrelevant content that just makes absolutely no sense. No earthly business being on your website in the first place. And all of this is occurring behind the scenes without you as a website owner ever knowing until it ever shows up in your analytics, which is the worst case scenario, because that shows that it's been around for a while and you're now only spotting it, and now your search engine rankings are taking a huge hit. So stay tuned for my next video though. I'm going to find potentially hundreds of 301 redirects in a website and show you why search engine ranks, well, you know, they can be downranked because of them. I'm going to teach you how to replace them all in just seconds. So stick around. Let's get those numbers up.